Good morning. It's Sunday morning and it's just beautifully sunny out, and I have my coffee and it's just feels like it's going to be a good day. So I had been doing a little research on a concept called echoism. So basically this psychological concept, from what I understand, is a theory created by Craig Malkin, or proposed by Craig Malkin. He's a Harvard psychologist, and I believe he's a professor too, who studies narcissistic tendencies and narcissistic personality disorder. And echoism is basically the opposite of narcissism, and they both stem from childhood trauma correlating to insecure attachment disorder. If you didn't have a secure attachment to a parental figure or somebody in your life who you looked for support from, and this, he says, manifests itself in a couple of different ways. Can manifest itself from either a parent that always indicated that anything that bad happened to their child was their fault. So, this could be, from a toddler falling down, or from in my case, a decision that I made as a teenager or a young adult, not in line with that person's belief systems. They would interpret that as a failing on their part. So the consistent theme in that case is that the child is not is a direct reflection of the parent's capabilities. So there's no independent self. This would be that if the child expressed a need or desire that wasn't in line with the parental need or desire, that it would be seen as a negative thing. So what happens is that the child suppresses their needs. And the other example he uses is a child who's dealing with a parent with mental health disorders, such that they are significantly non-functional, and the child has to provide support for the parental figure. So that's the second scenario, and that means that the child is sort of responsible for the parent's mental and physical, or one or the other, health, and is, again, not a separate individual. And the third piece of insecure attachment is actually just blatant neglect. So these three things can manifest itself in two types of coping mechanisms, and one is the echoism, which is where you suppress all of your needs and desires, and expressing needs and desires feels very scary and vulnerable, and person with echoism will usually be a highly sensitive person with strong empathy, and they will, if they feel like their needs could potentially not be in line with the other person's, they will not express them or have a very difficult time expressing them. And the reverse side of that is somebody with insecure attachment disorder can have narcissistic tendencies, and that means that they feel like their needs are the most important and have no problem ensuring that those needs are being met at the expense of other people around them. And that would be like disregarding or dismissing another person's needs as significant. And it's kind of like you have a lot of people with echoism get together with people with narcissism tendencies, because it's like a perfect psychological match. You have one person with echoism that suppresses all their needs, doesn't want to express their needs because it feels scary, and then you have on the other end somebody with narcissistic tendencies pushing their needs and valuing their needs above everybody else. They're both based out of low self-esteem. One with the echoism, worried that if they express their needs, they will lose an attachment to the person that they've attached themselves to. And the other side, with narcissistic tendencies, thinking that they absolutely need to not have their viewpoint or anything questioned, and they need to always ensure that their needs are being met. And so they kind of end up together. And I think this is really interesting. One of the things that I have struggled with is really understanding the concept of narcissism, because I always associated with these grandiose personalities, these braggarts and, showy, look at me kind of things. But from what I have understood, there's another kind of narcissistic tendency, and these are the introverted narcissistic people. And these people are introverted, but also they do feel like they are very special by either their intellect or some kind of maybe service that they provide. I grab my coffee. So, the hallmark, he said, basically of someone with narcissistic tendencies is that they will refuse all external means of support. Like, they really have trouble being vulnerable, and to the point where they will refuse normal offers for assistance. So if I can give an example, say your lawn needs to be mowed and your mower is broken, and your neighbor drives down with their lawnmower after they finished mowing their lawn and say, hey, do you want to borrow my mower? It looks like you got a problem. Somebody with insecure attachment and somebody with, potentially narcissistic tendencies would reject that offer for help, because if they accept it, it will reinforce that they have a weakness, that they are actually vulnerable in some way. And so these people have a very, very difficult time showing any kind of emotion. They've blocked off that. So what I'm thinking about now is, are INFJs more a tendency to fall in the echoism spectrum? Because we do have strong FE, extroverted feeling, and we do recognize easily the wants and needs and desires of other people. And I don't know, but it seems like a lot of INFJs I know have some history of um, childhood trauma. I mean, that goes for other personality types too, but I do believe that most of the INFJs I've met have some kind of history surrounding dysfunctional family as they're growing up, or some kind of issue surrounding support and normal attachment in the home. So I just wondered if a lot of INFJs kind of do embody this echoism or have echoism. And in my case, I know, personally, I have struggled with that. And it kind of ties in with boundary setting, because with strong FE, with strong extroverted feeling, knowing the needs and wants and desires of other people, and on top of that, wanting to create harmony, if you're with somebody that does have narcissistic tendencies, you will tend to not express your needs, wants, and desires. So I was just something that I was thinking of as I'm kind of going through all of this. I also do understand that I'm a self-pres Enneagram 4, so there's that, and I think, that always manifests itself, and, because that's a counter type of the 4 wanting to feel special, and the counter type is not wanting to feel special or having judgment against having to do everything you possibly can to not be seen as special. And so I'm wondering if, there are other Enneagram self-pres 4s out there who have this echoism tendency. Anyways, I think that all of my MBTI and Enneagram stuff has kind of lended itself to, in the past, when I wasn't aware of this, lining up with people that sort of had some kind of narcissistic tendencies. And now that I have realized this, I only learned about the echoism piece recently, and honestly, there's still so many questions I have about this concept and whether it's a real thing, because I do strongly believe in MBTI and Enneagram, and I do know that I am aware that INFJs, a lot of the people talking about INFJ door slams kind of mention that a component of an INFJ completing that door slam, well, I hate that term, but is to turn the person that they are interacting with into a narcissist, so that they can then decide that that person is evil or bad in some way, so that they can disconnect their feelings from that person and complete ejecting that person from their life. So, it does make me a little suspicious of embracing this concept, just because I think with strong FE, I can understand why you would have a tendency to have to, when you disconnect from somebody, to make them bad in some way, because otherwise you would let that person back in your life. But that, I just have to say that, like, that may be the case, but it also may be the case that that person does have um, behaviors that are bad for you. And INFJs do attract narcissists. This is kind of something that is very well known. I don't think INFJs are alone in this. I think anybody with extroverted feeling would have a problem with narcissists in their life, and so that would include ISFJs as well. So anyways, it's just, I've been thinking a lot about echoism, and if any of you have thoughts on that or thoughts on what I said, I'd be interested in hearing more about it. It's just kind of new to me, and I think it's just part of me processing and questioning how I view the world. I think so anybody with NI dominant does have a tendency to question their perceptions, or anybody with any healthy person with dominant NI should question their perceptions. And like, I'll just give you an example that I know that I have a tendency to kind of narrowly focus on one thing and just like kind of miss other things. And I know that sometimes helps me get to conclusions, but it does kind of make me, when I see something that I missed, be like, oh, are there other things that I missed? So I can give you an example of that, because that, I mean, what I'm talking about is a bit abstract, I think, maybe for some people that maybe not dominant NI might not understand what I'm saying. But so I was to dinner with my boyfriend, and I was talking with him, and we were having a great conversation, and I was entirely focused on, like, you know, the food and looking at my date, and like really in my NI zone, like reading his body language, and I wasn't really thinking about, I wasn't really processing my environment entirely, because I had already, I walked in, we sat down, I had taken in that. I didn't feel like I needed to really pay attention to that anymore. And so while I'm sitting there, we're talking, and I guess somebody walked by. I didn't really see who walked by the little booth that we were in. With COVID times, everybody is super separated. So at this table was like, 3 or 4 away, and I didn't know, I didn't really take in who was over there. So as this person walked by, my boyfriend's eyes went like that, and I was like, he was like, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "What? What?" He was like, "Oh my God, that guy was jacked, and he had like the giantest muscles." He's like, it was like the Hulk just walked by. And so my boyfriend is an ISFJ, so um, he definitely would have a tendency to notice. He's also an Enneagram 6, so like he would have a tendency to notice, whatever is going on, around him. He has like a really clear awareness of everything that is happening around him. And I was like, "Oh, really? Like, I didn't notice." And I was like, "That's kind of like odd." So I was like, is the guy gonna come back by, or did he leave? He's like, "No, I think he's gonna come back by." The guy walked back by. Oh my God, how did I miss this like giant hulk of a person that just walked by our table. He had muscles upon muscles, and he was tattooed from head to foot. And I'm not like having any judgment on this person at all or anything like that. It's just more like, how did I miss this ostentatious, like, giant person that walked by our table? And so when it was pointed out to me that this existed, then I can take it in, and be like, oh yeah, wow, that is pretty crazy. And we had a little conversation about it, but it's crazy that I missed that. Not yeah. So, anyways, um, but that is an example of something that I get concerned about. Like, how did I miss that? And are there other things that I missed? And so I commented to my boyfriend about this. I was like, this is something that, happens. Like, I don't take this into account. He's like, really? And then it was funny because then he was like, I can tell you everybody that's sitting in this restaurant that have come in and have left. He's like, 3 people have come in, 4 people have left. When we got here, there was these couple, they were sitting in that booth and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, he remembered in detail every specific thing that had happened, and since like we walked in and sat down. And for me, not so much. So I don't know. It's kind of like how this relates back to what I was talking about before is, I do appreciate the psychological theories, and I will take them into account and process through them. But I do also understand that I have blind spots in my own tendencies. So I think it's important to take in these concepts and, but also question, like, when you do come to the conclusion that you believe somebody may have narcissistic tendencies, that you should also really go through your perceptions of how things have occurred, and like back check them with somebody else, um, because you could have missed something. You could have missed the giant muscular person in the abstract sense that walked by your table. Just I just try to make sure that I'm being realistic about the information that I've taken in. And um, so, anyways, I I am doing that, and in a lot of cases, my NI is functioning properly, and I did take into account the information that was relevant for me and for my situation. But just I need to be aware myself, and anybody that has NI Dom, or maybe even NI, secondary, um, know that you will tend to filter out information, and that information could maybe change the story. So, put my coffee table down. So that's just my Sunday morning musings, and hopefully it's helpful in some way. I don't know how it would be helpful, but um, this is just my own thoughts, and that's all I got. That's all I got to give. So hopefully it's enough. Have a great day.